Transportation has always been an essential need. A few hundred years ago, you'd have either to walk or pick the best horses to go from one place to another. But the reality nowadays is quite different, where people need to pick which cars suits them the best. But after, there are also many other questions that they need to answer. For example, should they lease it or buy it cash? Should they buy an electric car or a traditional one? Or should they buy a new car or a used one? This is what you'll discover in today's video, where I'll do the math and find what is the best options for you depending on your situation. The first thing that you need to ask yourself when you are buying for a car is, what is your total budget? So how much of a car can you afford? To do so, a great rule would be the 20, 4, and 10 rule, which is basically a 20% down payment, a 4-year loan term, and 10% of your income. This is the rule that you need to follow if you want to finance your car, but as we'll see later on, I would personally prioritize to buy cash if you can. When we do the calculus, knowing that the average Canadian earns about $65,000 per year, or about $5,400 per month, this means that the total monthly payments that you could afford, knowing that this number also includes the total insurance and gas bill, is about $540 per month. So to make it simpler, just to include all the car payments that you would be able to afford per month, it would be basically around $400 per month. And so if we put it on a 4 years loan term with an average interest rate of about 5.42% and a 20% down payment, it would mean that you could afford a car slightly below $20,000. Obviously, at this budget, you can't afford the newest Porsche, but there are still plenty of great used and new cars that can be found at these prices. But if you're looking for the cheapest cars possible, which would reduce your total monthly payments, your best choice would be the used cars. And this leads us to the second question, which is to know whether or not you should go for a used or a new car. The answer to this question will be that it depends on your situation and your objective. Personally, since I'm a big number guy that is looking to reach financial freedom as soon as possible, I would be leaning more towards the used cars. The biggest pros of these types of cars is the fact that they tend to be quite lower in price compared to the newest ones. Add to this, as you can see with this graph, over the first 5 years of the car, it tends to depreciate and lose over 60% of its total value, meaning that buying a used car could come with a 60% discount compared to the newest one. And as you can also see, the used cars will also tend to depreciate less over time, meaning that they remain pretty much at the same value than you've bought them initially. Additionally, the big advantage of used cars, since they don't have a lot of value compared to the newest one, is the fact that you will tend to pay less in insurance fees. However, the biggest con is also the fact that usually you would need to pay more in potential maintenance fees because of unexpected expenses that could be linked to some mechanical problems, for example. Indeed, when you don't proceed to a total inspection and when you don't have the full history of this car, it means that these older vehicles will require more frequent repairs and may not be covered under warranty. Plus, another detail that might be important for you is the fact that these older cars usually don't have the same technology and options as the newest ones. It means that if you are used to have a great rear camera when you are doing your parking with your current car and that you are looking to buy a used one that doesn't have it, it might be a little bit hard for you to choose this cheapest option. And so for the newest cars, as you are now able to understand, even if they tend to cost more upfront and even if they also have some higher fees related to your insurance and also even if they have more depreciation over the first couple of years, the big pros of them is the fact that they tend to have some lower rates when you try to finance them, and they also have the latest technologies, which is quite useful and interesting for all the cars enthusiasts. But as I mentioned, in my personal case, since I am quite young at the moment and I'm looking to mainly invest all of my money into great assets, and since cars are not any types of assets, I would personally prioritize used cars every day compared to the the newest ones. But another option that could be interesting for people that are cost cautious is said to be the electric cars. Indeed, knowing that the average Canadian spends about $200 per month on gas and that the average EV users will only spend between $25 to $50 per month on electricity, this could be a great way for you if you are looking to save some money upfront on the fuel that you need to put in your car. A few years ago, while these cars were costing a little bit more compared to some other cars that are more traditional, they were made and they were used because of the great potential environmental impact that it could have on the nature. But with the multiple incentives made by the government over the past couple of years to encourage people to buy more EV cars, they've become a more affordable cars for the people. However, it is important to understand that at the beginning of 2025, the Canadian government has decided to pause these incentives to the consumers. And at the same time, the big cons of these types of cars is the fact that they tend to have some short batteries and autonomy. And when you combine that with some long delay before being able to fully charge a battery and some lack of proper infrastructure to charge these vehicles, these are some of the most important inconvenience that at the moment, even if the government wants to push fully the EV cars before a certain date over the next couple of decades, I would be personally waiting on the sideline before to buy these types of cars. Finally, for the last debate, which is whether or not you should buy or lease your car, my point of view is that you should never lease a car except if you potentially have a business, meaning that you would be eligible for some potential tax deductions linked to this car. In every other types of scenarios, I would be buying it cash if I can, and if I can't, I would basically put as much as possible as a down payment to reduce your total monthly payments. Unlike a real estate property, a car is not an asset that will tend to gain value over time. So let's say that you decide to finance a $50,000 car, it will tend to lose value, and if after 1 year it drops to $40,000, well, you would still be paying some monthly payments on this $50,000, and at the same time you wouldn't be able to resell it at the same price that you've initially purchased it. It is why now that you know that the used cars will tend to lose less value over the first couple of years that you've bought it compared to the newest ones. If you can't buy a car all cash, I would personally prioritize to finance a used car. And so even if buying a car all cash will cost you more upfront, it will be very beneficial for you in the long term because it will help you to grow your total net worth way quicker. If we take the example that I mentioned earlier, where you'd be paying about $400 per month for your monthly payments on your car on a 4-year period, if instead you decide to buy your car all in cash and you would take this $400 per month payment, but instead invest it directly into a great index fund with an average annual return of about 10% per year, it would make that over the next 4 years you would have over $23,000 and an old car instead of only having an old car. And so if you're looking to use this path and find a way where to invest this money to grow it as much as possible over the next couple of years, well, check out the video that's gonna be right over here, and I will see you soon. Peace.